Welcome to Israel Now News. I'm Yochanan El Rome.
And I'm Erin Viner.
In our top story, Iran is building a military installation just miles from Israel's northern frontier. Satellite imagery recently published by the British Broadcasting Corporation reveals that Iran is expanding an army installation in Syria 8 miles south of Damascus and just 30 miles from the Israeli border. The BBC report also noted that high-ranking Iranian officials have visited the site recently. Independent analysis of the existing structures confirm that they are of a military nature. Security officials believe the hardline Islamic Republic is endeavoring to create a permanent military base in Syria. Jerusalem has repeatedly warned the international community of Tehran's attempt to expand into other countries directly or by the use of proxy armies, and the Jewish state views this development, just miles from the Golan Heights, as a grave threat to its security.
U.S. Ambassador to Israel David Friedman believes that President Trump is going to move the U.S. Embassy to Jerusalem. Speaking to the Zionist Organization of America, David Friedman said that the relocation of the diplomatic compound to the capital of the Jewish state is a matter of when, not if, and he pledged his commitment to advocate for the move. Friedman also noted the improvement of relations between the two countries, saying that the United States views Israel as a critical strategic ally in one of the world's toughest neighborhoods. Friedman went on to say that Americans should be proud to support Israel and to advocate for the Jewish state. He said that support for Israel is a quintessential American value and said that he is so honored to have a mandate from President Trump to strengthen the relationship between the U.S. and Israel. He said that not a day goes by that I do not thank God for this opportunity and seek his guidance regarding this extraordinary mission.
Jerusalem has endorsed a report by a United Nations watchdog organization which concludes that the Syrian government used chemical weapons. The findings were released by a joint UN organization for the prohibition of chemical weapons. It states with definity that on April 4th, the Syrian Air Force dropped poison gas on a city, killing more than 80 people, many of them children. Israel's foreign ministry said the report unequivocally proves that the government of Bashar al-Assad is responsible for the deaths of dozens of people by using nerve agents. It also provides evidence of the Syrian regime's willingness and continued ability to use banned weapons. Jerusalem called on the international community to investigate every instance of the use of chemical weapons and bring those responsible to justice.
More than 60,000 people participated in an anti-Jewish rally in Warsaw last week. Independence Day ceremonies were overshadowed by the Polish far-right and white supremacist movements who paraded through the capital city. Participants yelled xenophobic chants and called for a pure white Europe and a Poland free from Jews. The demonstration became violent when masked rioters set fire to cars and clashed with Polish police. This is the latest in a disturbing trend of rising anti-Semitism in the country that murdered 3 million of its Jewish citizens in the Holocaust.
The IDF confirmed that it shot down an unmanned aerial vehicle as it approached the Golan Heights last week. The drone was launched from Syria and was quickly destroyed by the Patriot missile defense system. Israel's Defense Minister Avigdor Lieberman released a statement saying that Israel views the Syrian regime responsible for all firing and violations of our sovereignty, and he called on it to restrain armed factions operating from its territory. Lieberman stressed that Israel will not allow a Shiite axis in Syria to establish a base for forward action.
Thousands of Arabs attended a rally to honor the late terrorist mastermind Yasser Arafat in Gaza last week. The Hamas militia allowed Fatah to hold a rally in honor of its former leader who died 13 years ago. In his speech, current PA leader Mahmoud Abbas said that his government will remain steadfast until the Palestinians obtain a state with Jerusalem as its capital. A recent poll reflects that the majority of Israeli Jews want to be allowed to pray on the Temple Mount. The Muslim Religious Authority, which controls the holy site, heavily restricts non-Muslim visitors and strictly forbids Jews and Christians from praying there. But Jews and Christians are becoming more vocal in their demands for freedom of religion at the holy site, and the results are reflected in the recent polls. The survey, conducted for the Jerusalem Institute for Strategic Studies, states that 68% of Israeli Jews want to pray at the site where both Jewish temples once stood. The poll also reflected that 3/4 of Israeli Jews want any future peace accord to stipulate that Israel maintain sovereignty over the Temple Mount. Jerusalem faces enormous international pressure to sustain the status quo on the Mount, which is the holiest site in Judaism and one of the most important places in Christianity.
In medical news, an Israeli hospital has become the first to use an MRI machine especially designed for infants. Jerusalem's Shaare Zedek Hospital delivers over 22,000 babies each year. That's more than any other hospital in the world. They are now using the new MRI technology, which allows newborns to receive these important scans. It's called the Embrace device and was recently approved by the FDA. It's an infant-sized MRI machine installed in the neonatal unit at the Jerusalem Hospital. Unlike a regular MRI, Embrace creates a magnetic field from iron, which is confined to the device itself, allowing the staff to stay close to the baby during the scan.
The U.S. Navy's newest supercarrier has been given a maritime Torah scroll. The USS Gerald R. Ford can house up to 75 aircraft and is equipped with 2 nuclear reactors, but its most valuable weapon will reside within the ship's chapel. The Hebrew Torah scroll was commissioned in the name of Jacob Kamaris, a Jewish veteran who served during World War II. It was specially designed for the ship so that it's smaller and lighter than a standard biblical parchment. The ship's crew of 4,000 sailors will consist of up to 40 Jews at any given time, and the presence of an authentic Torah scroll will help them to pray, worship, and celebrate Jewish holidays while they're deployed at sea.
Israel rolled out the red carpet for its 3 millionth tourist this year. 31-year-old Iona Isaac from Romania was showered with flowers and balloons as she stepped off the plane at Ben Gurion International Airport near Tel Aviv. She was personally greeted by the Minister of Tourism, Yariv Levin. Levin hailed the arrival of the 3 millionth tourist in 2017 as a historic milestone. He said the millions of tourists who came to Israel this year are now ambassadors of the Jewish state throughout the world. Isaac was given a helicopter tour of the country, followed by a gourmet dinner at the home of one of Israel's top chefs. The highlight of the festivities was a tour of the Tower of David Museum in the Old City of Jerusalem, guided by none other than Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu.
That concludes the news portion of our show. Stay tuned for Ask the Source with Josh Reinstein.
Hello and welcome to Ask the Source. I'm your host Josh Reinstein, and we're here on a beautiful day in Jerusalem on our rooftop studio. My guest today is Reverend Emmanuel Matolo. He is from the Zion Christian Church. Reverend, thank you for being on the show.
Thank you.
Tell our viewers, what is the Zion Christian Church?
The Zion Christian Church is a church that obviously affiliates to Christianity, and it was incepted in 1910 by the first head of the church by the name of Ignace Barnabas Lekanyani.
Your church actually has 15 million members. That's twice the size of Israel. That's more than all the Jews in the world combined. How does that affect your support for Israel?
This affects us, our support for Israel, in the sense that Israel obviously is a holy land, where obviously the affiliation or getting into the church was encouraged by this very holy land.
Now, we don't get a lot of support out of South Africa, so your church is very significant. Do you think because of the support we get from your church, there will be more political support for Israel?
Definitely, because we all believe that we are all made in the name of the Lord up there. And when he looks at us, he looks at us as nothing else but same humanity, same Homo sapien. And again, at the end of the day, because of the high religious Holy Land, at the end of the day, there will be a support because we all believe in the Lord, and He's the only one who can even give us hope for the future.
You are here on a big delegation. You've brought all the church leaders to meet with leaders in Israel. What is something that you've seen that's really been a surprise to you while you've been here in Israel?
When we arrived here, we came across something very, very impressive, where, the Jews, the Arabs, the Christians, praying in nothing else but the Lord up there in harmony at all times. And it is this harmony that at the end of the day gives us hope for the future.
People are very surprised to see the peace of Jerusalem. As you mentioned, there are 3 distinct faiths, but everyone gets along. We're the safest capital in the world. What do you think is the future of the peace of Jerusalem?
The future of the peace of Jerusalem is very, very bright. Never mind it takes us long a time to can be aware of the warmth and the mercy of the Lord God. But at the end of the day, we are arriving there.
God commands the people to pray for the peace of Jerusalem. Does your church take part in the prayers for the peace of Jerusalem?
Definitely, our church is an international church where it prays for everybody, particularly the peace of Jerusalem, where all our hearts, wherever we are, we think about it, kneel down and request God to can make sure that at the end of the day, we become one thing, nothing else but the children of God. Thank you.
One of the most important diplomatic efforts of the State of Israel is faith-based diplomacy. That's people who have faith getting involved in the political process. Do you see your 15 million member church getting involved in electing pro-Israel parliament members maybe in the future in South Africa?
Yeah, definitely. That will happen. As long as we are here, believing in what God gives us and what He instructs us to do, that will happen.
We've seen a new shift in support from Africa to Israel. Our Prime Minister has been there twice this year. Do you think this is going to continue in other places around Africa, this new relationship between Africa and Israel?
The new relation is something that obviously it's a present from God. It's a gift from Him. And at the end of the day, the Lord will really make sure that He gives us all the answers and save us as nothing else but Homo sapiens, belonging to one God at all times.
Reverend, there are literally tens of millions of people watching this show. What message do you have for our viewing audience?
The message that I have to the audience is that there is nothing and nothing best than harmonizing. The way in which we are able to react to one another, respond to one another, and give guidance that never mind we are so many churches, but what remains a fact is we might be praying from one point to another, different in diversion, but at the end of the day we've got one God who will finally make sure that we get the reward, of course, requested by us from Him.
Reverend, thank you for being on the show, and thank you for tuning in to Ask the Source. I'm your host, Josh Reinstein. Now back to the studio.
Up next, the return to Zion with Karen Hayesod.
Shalom and welcome to the Return to Zion with Karen Hayesod. I'm Eliezer Moody Sandberg, World Chairman of Karen Hayesod, the leading official fundraising organization for the State of Israel. This is the story of the biggest aliyah in Israel's history from the former Soviet Union. Be inspired by the stories of the prisoners of Zion, whose courage led to the crumbling of the Iron Curtain. Please help us to continue to bring the jewels of Russia back home to the Promised Land.
Since the beginning of the 20th century, supporters of Keren HaYesod spearheaded the efforts needed to establish the first independent Jewish state after 2,000 years of exile. For Jews across the world, Keren HaYesod helped forge a new age of hope, making the dream of 2 millennia come true. But at the same time, the Jews living in the former Soviet Union suffered immensely. Religious practice was suppressed, and Jewish national identity crushed. By the 1950s, under Stalin's cruel regime, countless persecuted Jews were executed or sent far away to the gulags. Russia's once thriving Jewish life was no more. But many refused to forget their heritage and God's covenant with the Jewish people. Secretly, they studied Hebrew and the Torah. They covertly practiced holiday celebrations. And above all, they dreamt of returning to the Jewish homeland, to Israel. Aware of the consequences, many still applied for exit visas. Viewed by the Soviet authorities as an act of treason, these brave individuals were dismissed from their jobs, harassed, and ostracized from society. By the 1970s, many leading Jewish activists had been sentenced to long periods in jail for fabricated offenses. But even suffering in the most appalling conditions, they continued to demand they be allowed to go free to Israel. Because of their refusal to give in, they became known globally as refuseniks. Their determination inspired a mass international solidarity movement. Jews across the world, including the supporters of Keren HaYesod and their Christian friends, held mass demonstrations and lobbied global leaders. In the words of the Bible, they demanded, "Let my people go." Refuseniks such as Natan Sharansky became household names. Alongside the likes of Yuli Edelstein, Ida Nudel, and other prisoners of Zion, they became international symbols of human rights and Jewish freedom.
Successful demonstration in those days of Jews who wanted to go to Israel was 5-10 people standing for 5 minutes in the center of Moscow Square with the slogans, "Let us go to Israel." The more people know about demonstration, the more chance that KGB, secret police, will know. Then there will be no demonstration. And the punishment can be up to 5 years of exile. But the idea was that if at least one foreign journalist knows about this, and he will come and he will inform, we are arrested. In the evening it is broadcasted all over the world about our arrest. Next day, hundreds of thousands of Jews all over the world go on their demonstrations, demand from their government to act. And that's how we were organizing this struggle.
By the end of the 1980s, the pressure began to pay off. Sharansky became the first political prisoner released by Soviet Premier Gorbachev. Sharansky and his comrades were welcomed to Israel as heroes, bringing to life the prophecy of Zechariah, "I will return to Zion and dwell in Jerusalem." When Communist Russia collapsed in the early 1990s, over 1 million Jews followed these prisoners of Zion to Israel. With Keren HaYesod's help, they built flourishing lives in the home of their forefathers. Those who once languished in Russian jails became influential Israeli leaders. Sharansky served as a 4-time minister and deputy prime minister. After being imprisoned for 3 years in Siberia, Yuli Edelstein is now current Speaker of Israel's parliament. Ida Nudel remains a leading social activist and a powerful Israeli public voice. The legacy of the prisoners of Zion will truly continue to shine bright for many years to come. And yet, there's so much more work to be done to help bring more Jews from Russia back home to Israel. Keren HaYesod remains at the heart of this mission. Now is your chance to join us in supporting the next wave of Aliyah from Russia and be part of history in the making.
Let's bless Israel together.
To donate and get information, call us at 1-800-505-1665 or visit our website at www.khisrael.org.
Israel's Defense Forces, the IDF, are unlike any other army in the world, perhaps in history. And not only because the IDF is the first Jewish defense force in 2,000 years. As someone who served in the IDF for about 35 years as a regular soldier, an officer, as a reserve officer, a veteran of several wars, I'll tell you that service in the IDF is very different than any other army you know. We don't salute very much. We don't march. We call our officers by their first names. If we like our officers, we'll call them by their last names. We're not very much on pomp, not very much on dress uniforms or medals, but we know how to fight. And we know how to fight at a moment's notice. The Israeli army can be called up within 12 hours to go out and defend this country, and has done on numerous occasions. Israel has universal conscription. Vast majority of Israelis do serve, both men and women, men for a minimum of 3 years, women for a minimum of 2 years, longer if either are officers or if they want to reserve the standing army. The Israeli army today is the second largest citizens army in the world after South Korea's, but it is more than twice as large as the British and French armies combined, and getting larger. It is widely viewed as one of the most sophisticated, technological, and highly motivated armies in the world, with a new branch of cybersecurity. And over 20% of the world's investment today in cybersecurity is in the state of Israel. We are a world leader in this crucial defense field. But the Israel Defense Forces is far more than a military and defense group. It engages in social activism. It is a prime institution for integrating new immigrants to the country, for educating poor neighborhoods, for service in hospitals, for service in non-governmental organizations. All of this is part of the Israel Defense Forces. The Israel Defense Forces is in so many ways what Israel is all about.
Please stay tuned for the ICEJ report from the International Christian Embassy, Jerusalem.
Today we're at Ben Gurion Airport to welcome 211 French immigrants who are arriving today to make Israel their home.
It's like a dream. Everybody is here. There are lots of happiness, lots of simcha. It's a great day.
It's really moving. The Jewish state is so important for the Jewish people, and seeing Jewish people coming from abroad, from all over the world, to make their lives here in Israel is such a brave move.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam shehecheyanu v'kiyimanu v'higanu lezman hazeh.
I feel excited. It takes me back to my own Aliyah, and I always think about 1,000 years of dreams and prayers, and what a great circle each of these people is closing.
V'kol echad mikem hayom asa tzad anak לבנות עתיד יותר בטוח לכם, לילדים שלכם ולכל אחד מאיתנו, למדינת ישראל.
Je suis très contente. Merci d'être avec nous et de partager nos joies. Je suis très contente d'être là pour accueillir les 200 Olim de France. Am Israël Chai, ve shalom lekulam, toda rabba, et merci à tous.
The Christian Embassy, Jerusalem, has been our friend for many years. We work with them, and their donations and their help make days like today possible. Christians around the world, they are our best friends. And Christians and Jews, we belong together.
If you could sense the excitement in this room today and the dancing, you'd have wanted to dance too. the songs that were sung, rejoicing in God's faithfulness, the covenant-keeping God who keeps his promises to his people. If you want to be a part of helping more people return to Israel, go to icej.org/aliyah.
In 1980, the Israeli parliament passed a law declaring a united Jerusalem as the eternal capital of the State of Israel. Threatened by the Arab League with an oil embargo, national embassies in Jerusalem closed their doors. That same year, Christians from around the world gathered in Jerusalem to celebrate the Feast of Tabernacles. Sensing the isolation of the Israeli people, the participants and leaders of this gathering decided to establish the International Christian Embassy in Jerusalem.
The International Christian Embassy Jerusalem is since more than 30 years right here in Jerusalem to connect the global church with the nation of Israel. For many Jewish people throughout the centuries, the only face of Christianity, what they experienced, was the ugly face of anti-Semitism, of Christians persecuting the Jewish people wherever they found them. As Christian Embassy, we are here in Israel to show a new face of the church, a new face of Jesus Christ to the Jewish people.
The mission of the International Christian Embassy Jerusalem is fourfold: to educate the global church about Israel through events, television programs, and print publications, to promote Christian celebration in Israel and around the world through the annual Feast of Tabernacles celebration, to mobilize the worldwide body of Christ in prayer for Israel, influencing global leaders and ICEJ representatives in over 80 nations, and to show compassion to the people of Israel through social projects that are changing lives in every sector of Israeli society. To learn more about the ICEJ and how you can partner with us, visit icej.org.
That's all for this edition of Israel Now News. I'm Yochanan El-Rom.
And I'm Erin Viner reporting from our studio in Jerusalem. Please join us again next week for all of your Israel updates.